Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing yet another movie review, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This movie is a crime thriller from South Korea, Korean language English subs, released in the year 2005, directed by Yujin Pang, and this film is called Princess Aurora. So Princess Aurora is the nickname of the serial killer that the police have given them because every time they pick off a victim, there is a Princess Aurora cartoon sticker that is left at the crime scene. And so the detectives are scratching their heads, thinking that this is very strange, and in order to actually reveal the identity of this killer, the main investigator has to piece together the connection between the victims. So the further he goes into the investigation, the more he starts to realise that the serial killer might be in fact connected to his past. That something traumatic happened to him that he's trying to forget, but it's actually shaped the person that he is today. So in order to try and stop this killer, he has to come to terms with who he is as a person, which is going to be very emotionally challenging, but he has to do this for the greater good, and whether or not he can is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Princess Aurora. I come into this movie with a lot of excitement. I didn't really have that much expectation based on the fact that no one really talks about this movie. Now that can be for two good reasons. Number one, it's not very good, or number two, it just had poor marketing. And so the excitement is there because sometimes you come across an undiscovered gem. And I was hoping that this was going to be a movie like that because number one, it's South Korean, and number two, it's a South Korean serial killer film. Now serial killer movies such as I Saw the Devil, The Chaser, and also Memories of Murder basically put South Korea on the map as far as cinema is concerned. So for that reason, naturally, the expectation is based coming onto Princess Aurora, but it's not coming onto Princess Aurora for the film itself, but it's basically the influence that South Korean cinema has had on me. And so I was really excited, and I was hoping that this would be an undiscovered gem, but unfortunately, it really hasn't been talked about because it's just not that good. And I think the movie actually had the grounds to be a great film, but it just didn't have the ability to execute it in a way that was very satisfying, which is something I'll go into a little bit later. But what I liked about Princess Aurora was the fact that it still had that very strange absorbing quality. Is that this is a movie that has far more negatives than positives, but it was never really boring because of the way the story was told. The movie is very vague at the start. There's a killer who basically dispatches a victim in a very, very brutal way, and you want to know what is going on. You want to know the motives behind these killings, and as the movie goes along, it starts to piece together things very slowly, so it almost feels like a jigsaw puzzle that's coming together. And so by the time you're in the halfway stage of the film, if you left thinking that this is not a very good movie and that you actually notice all the negatives that the movie has, you'll still feel that sense that you need closure. And so the absorbing quality is something that has to be applauded, and I think Yujin Pang actually does a good job at keeping the viewer glued to the screen. And at the end of the movie, it will tie up all loose ends, so you feel that certain sense of reward for actually sticking at it. And so I thought, alright, well, it does prevent the movie from being a complete disaster. I thought the cinematography was fairly decent, I thought the violence was extremely hard-hitting, and the fact that it was very sporadic, the violence, it was very few and far between, hit you on much more of an impact. There are some very graphic scenes of violence, but I never really felt like the violence was taking center stage. I never felt like the shocking quality of the film was overriding the fact that it was compensating for something else. And so I thought, okay, well, that leads to a fairly, impressive sort of element that the movie has. I thought that the overall cinematography was excellent. As I said, it's a very dark film. It has a fairly decent soundtrack, and it does have its moments. And so the movie, as I said, is not a complete disaster, but unfortunately, that's where the positives stop, and this is where the negatives start. This is a movie that wants to be I Saw the Devil. This is a movie that wants to be The Chaser or Memories of Murder. This is a movie that's clearly basically taken inspiration from all the brilliant South Korean films, but unfortunately it's trying to take too many shortcuts. It's not hitting you on an emotional level. The emotional complexity that those movies that I've just mentioned had is non-existent in this movie. The cardboard 2D characters never really hit you on that level where you feel as though you've lost a loved one. This is a movie where you watch the news and you hear something that's horrible that's happened to a family, but because they're so far away and you don't know them, you can disconnect yourself to a point where it never really happened. And so this is the feeling that you get in this movie. It's like watching the news, that this character is going through these horrible things, that the serial killer is actually going through horrible things, but because you never really know them as people, you can disconnect yourself. These people are cannon fodder. This is just another story to the long list of stories that you hear on the news all the time. And so the movie wants to be this complex sort of serial killer film and giving you an angle of a serial killer where you can sympathise with the serial killer, but because you don't know any of these people, you don't get that connection, therefore a lot of this film really doesn't work. And so it's cutting corners not only in the characters. I thought the script was definitely lacking. I thought it was a very bad script that didn't allow any of these actors to showcase interesting characters. And I thought the procedural element, the way the detectives come up with these conclusions was very unrealistic because I felt it was very rushed. I thought to myself, alright, well, how did you come to that conclusion based on the evidence that you had? And the simple fact is that it doesn't really want to tell you a story in a very realistic way where you can actually connect with what's going on. It's just more concerned piecing together the clues that the movie is feeding you through the curiosity. So on one hand, the curiosity prevents you from being bored, but on the other hand, you start to notice that things are rushed in a very unrealistic way, and therefore it does start to become noticeable. And unfortunately, all the emotional impact that the movie has at the end has to be force-fed. It has to be very melodramatic because there's no natural quality of sympathy in these characters. And so when the emotional melodramatic sort of stuff start to happen, you start to roll your eyes. It's a lot of crying, a lot of really sad music. They're really pulling at the heartstrings, and they have to do it because there's no way that you can get that emotion based on the fact that you know these people. And so that's ultimately the biggest problem with Princess Aurora. It wants to be the brilliant movie that a lot of other South Korean films are, but it's not prepared to do the hard work, and I thought the execution was poor. So overall, Princess Aurora is a movie that you would forget very soon, so if you pass up the opportunity, you're not really missing much. I'm going to give this movie 2 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching movies, and I'll see you later.